There's a version of me you've known, the steady one, the thoughtful one. The one who listens more than speaks, who seems grounded, who rarely lets his voice crack when conversations turn heavy. That's the version I learned how to present. Carefully built, carefully maintained, not fake, just filtered. But there's another version, the one that wakes up at 30:17 a.m. With a tight chest and a mind that replays old mistakes like they're happening again. The one that drafts messages and deletes them. The one that almost says what he feels and then swallows it because it suddenly feels too much, too needy, too risky. That's the version I've kept in a room inside me. Not because I wanted to deceive you, but because I wasn't sure you'd stay if you saw him clearly. You ever notice how we convince ourselves that withholding is kindness? That not sharing our doubts is a form of protection? I told myself that if I kept certain fears quiet, I was sparing you unnecessary weight. If I didn't talk about the insecurities, the comparisons, the moments I felt small, then I was being strong, stable, reliable. But that wasn't strength, it was strategy, and strategy has no place in intimacy. There's something exhausting about being almost known, about standing in front of someone who loves you and still feeling like they're loving a curated edition. It's subtle, no dramatic lies, no explosive secrets, just omissions, just edited vulnerability, just enough truth to feel close, but not enough to feel exposed. And exposure has always terrified me. I learned early that being too much made people uncomfortable. Too sensitive, too intense, too honest. So I adapted, I became measured, composed. I shared stories that painted me in growth, not confusion, in resilience, not fragility. And over time, I got really good at it. So good that sometimes even I forgot where the performance ended and I began. But intimacy doesn't grow in edited spaces. It grows in the raw ones. The ones where your voice trembles a little, where you pause mid-sentence because you're not sure how the words will land, where you say, "This is hard to admit," and mean it. I've been thinking about that threshold in relationships. The place where things are good, comfortable, connected. But hovering, you laugh together, share routines, talk about plans, maybe even share dreams. But there's still a room you haven't opened, still a truth sitting quietly between you. I've been standing at that threshold with you, not because you didn't make it safe, but because I didn't trust that safety would last if I tested it fully. I kept thinking, if I show this part, will it shift how they see me? If I admit this fear, will I become less attractive? If I reveal this doubt, will I look weaker? And here's the truth I've been avoiding. I've been afraid that I'm not enough. Not enough certainty. Not enough emotional stability. Not enough clarity about the future. Not healed enough. Not impressive enough. Not effortless enough. I carry this quiet suspicion that love has conditions, even when it doesn't announce them. So I tried to meet conditions that may not even exist. I tried to be the version of myself I imagined you needed. Calm. Assured. Progressed. I minimized the nights when I questioned everything. I downplayed the moments when I felt insecure about what I bring to the table. I made jokes when conversations got too vulnerable. I redirected when things got too real. And every time I did that, something small disconnected. Not dramatically, just slightly. Like lowering the volume on a song you love without realizing it. The strange thing is, the more you care about someone, the scarier it becomes to let them see your cracks, because the stakes feel higher. Rejection from someone you barely know stings. A rejection from someone you've built something with feels like collapse. So instead of risking collapse, I risked distance. I convinced myself that consistency was enough, that showing up, being kind, being present most of the time would compensate for the parts I wasn't sharing. But intimacy isn't built on partial presence. It's built on emotional transparency, on letting someone witness not just your strengths, but your uncertainties. I've had this image in my mind for years. A house with many rooms. The front rooms are clean, well-lit, welcoming. That's where I host people. That's where I feel confident. But in the back of the house, there are rooms I rarely enter. Rooms filled with old doubts, unfinished grief, questions I still don't have answers to. And I've loved you from the front rooms. But love deserves the whole house. The truth is, I'm still learning how to stay, not physically, emotionally. I have this instinct to prepare for loss, to subtly brace for it, to imagine the exit before it happens so it hurts less if it does. It's not that I expect you to leave. It's that part of me expects everything good to shift eventually. So I try to stay slightly self-protected. And that self-protection creates space. You once asked why I go quiet sometimes when conversations get intense. Why I deflect with humor. Why I say, I'm fine, a little too quickly. I didn't have language for it then. I do now. It's because depth feels like standing at the edge of something I can't control, and control has always felt like safety, but love doesn't operate on control. There's this illusion that if we perfect ourselves enough, we can secure love, that if we become stable enough, successful enough, healed enough, then we'll deserve someone staying. But that belief keeps us performing. It keeps us thinking intimacy is earned through flawlessness. And that's the lie I've been living in quietly. I don't have it all figured out. I don't wake up every day certain about who I am or where I'm headed. Some days I feel grounded and clear. Other days I feel like I'm building something meaningful while still secretly doubting my foundation. And I've been afraid that if you saw that fluctuation, you'd see instability instead of humanity. I've been afraid that you'd prefer someone more certain. There's shame in admitting insecurity when you're supposed to be steady. There's shame in saying, I don't always feel confident in what I bring. There's shame in confessing that sometimes you love deeply and still question whether you're lovable in return, but shame thrives in silence. And silence has been my companion in this. I've edited myself in small ways, not dramatic lies, just omissions. I didn't tell you how often I replay past relationship failures and wonder if I'm repeating patterns. I didn't tell you how sometimes I overthink your tone or your pauses and create stories that probably aren't real. I didn't tell you that on certain days I fight the urge to emotionally retreat before anything can hurt. Not because of you, because of me. There's a difference. It's easier to say, I'm just independent. It sounds stronger, more admirable. But sometimes independence is just fear with good branding. Sometimes it's a refusal to need anyone too much because needing feels like vulnerability and vulnerability feels like risk. And risk has never been comfortable for me, but neither has distance. There's a specific loneliness that comes from being loved for the version of you that feels safest to show. You appreciate the love. You value it, but part of you wonders if it would survive full disclosure. And that wondering creates tension, not dramatic tension, quiet tension. The kind that lingers under the surface. I don't want to love you from that place anymore. I don't want to calculate how much of myself is acceptable to reveal. I don't want to keep portions of my fear in a locked room because I'm afraid they'll shift your perception. I don't want to keep proving that I'm enough instead of simply being honest about when I don't feel like I am. There's something liberating about saying that out loud, not because it guarantees anything, but because it stops the performance. You know what I've realized? The transformation doesn't happen when someone responds perfectly to your vulnerability. It happens when you speak it, when you stop carrying it alone, when you decide that being real is more important than being impressive. I used to think love was about being chosen for your best qualities. Now I'm starting to understand it's about being accepted with your unresolved ones, the impatience, the overthinking, the lingering wounds, the days you don't feel strong. And I have those days when I question whether I'm doing this right, whether I'm showing up correctly, whether I'm enough for what we're building. I compare myself to invisible standards, to people who seem more secure, more emotionally fluent, more naturally open. And I wonder if you could feel more at ease with someone like that. That's the insecurity I haven't wanted you to see, not because I think it defines me, but because I fear it might redefine how you see me. But hiding it hasn't made it disappear. It's just made me carry it alone, and carrying it alone has made me feel separate even when we're close. Closeness has layers. There's shared time, shared laughter, shared plans, shared struggles. But the deepest layer is shared truth, the kind that makes your chest tighten before you speak, the kind that could shift everything. I want that layer with you, not the curated version, not the safe vulnerability, the real one, the one where I say, sometimes I'm scared you'll see all of me and decide it's too much. The one where I admit that I don't always feel secure in myself, that I'm still healing, still learning how to trust that someone can stay without me managing the outcome. It feels uncomfortable to say, but it feels worse not to. There's a moment after you open a locked door where everything feels exposed, like the air hits places that haven't been touched in years. That's what this feels like. Exposure? Not dramatic, not catastrophic, just honest. And honesty doesn't guarantee comfort. It guarantees clarity. I don't know how this lands. I don't know if it makes me look smaller or braver. I just know I'm tired of loving from behind walls, tired of protecting myself from the very connection I say I want. Because protection has a cost. It costs depth, it costs freedom, it costs the ability to fully relax into being known. And I want to relax with you. Not perform, not curate, not subtly brace for disappointment. Just exist, fully seen, fully human. I don't need you to fix anything. I don't need reassurance wrapped in perfect words. I just need space to be real without feeling like reality threatens everything. That's the room I've kept locked. Not a scandal, not a betrayal, just my fragility, my doubt, my humanity, the parts of me that don't feel polished, and I'm done pretending they don't exist. If this deepens us, I'll be grateful. If it shifts us, at least it will be real. But I can't keep living in almost known territory. I can't keep loving from edited angles. This is me without the filter. Not complete, not certain, not fearless. And maybe that's what intimacy has been asking for all along. There's a silence I've been carrying that you've probably felt but couldn't quite name. Not a loud silence. Not distance you could point to and say, there, that's where it changed. It's softer than that. It's in the pauses before I answer certain questions. In the way I shift the subject when things drift too close to my insecurities. In the careful way I choose words that reveal something, but never everything. I've mastered the art of partial honesty. Not lies, just edited truths, just enough depth to seem open, just enough vulnerability to feel real, but never the full weight of what's underneath. Never the fear that if I hand you the whole story, you might quietly decide it's more than you signed up for. There's a version of intimacy that feels safe because it stays on familiar ground. You talk about your days, your dreams, your frustrations, you hold each other, you laugh, you build plans. It looks like connection. And it is. But there's another level beneath that. A place where you stop trying to be impressive and start being exposed. That's the level I've been circling without stepping into. I keep asking myself why. You've given me no reason to doubt your capacity to understand me. No reason to assume you judge what I carry. And still I hesitate. Still, I measure how much of myself I release at once. It's not about you. It's about the story I learned a long time ago, that love is conditional, even when it pretends not to be, that people stay as long as you remain appealing, strong, stable, certain. That if your uncertainty shows too clearly, something in their perception shifts. So I became skilled at being perceived well. I learned how to articulate my growth without dwelling in my confusion. I learned how to talk about pain in past tense, as if everything inside me had already been resolved. I learned how to look calm even when my thoughts were spiraling. I made sure that when I showed weakness, it was controlled, digestible, framed in a way that still made me look self-aware and put together. But there are parts of me that aren't put together. There are days when I question whether I'm building something meaningful or just trying to outrun a quiet fear of not being enough. There are nights when I replay conversations in my head and wonder if I sounded distant, or needy, or too much. There are moments when I feel the urge to pull back just to test whether you'll lean in. I don't like admitting that. It sounds insecure, it sounds small, and I've worked hard not to feel small. But the truth is, sometimes I do. There's a particular kind of vulnerability that doesn't come from dramatic secrets. It comes from admitting fragility. From saying, I don't always trust that I'm worthy of what I have. That's harder than confessing a mistake. It's harder than revealing a past failure, because it exposes the ongoing narrative inside your head, and my internal narrative hasn't always been kind. I compare myself in ways I don't talk about. I measure my emotional responses against some invisible standard of how composed I think I should be. I hold myself to expectations I would never place on you. And when I fall short of those expectations, I retreat. Not visibly, just internally. That internal retreat is the room I've kept locked. It's where I store the doubts about whether I'm truly equipped to sustain something healthy. It's where I question if I've healed enough, if I've grown enough, if I've shed enough of my past patterns to deserve the future I'm trying to build. I haven't let you into that room because I thought love required confidence. I thought if you saw the moments when I hesitate or overthink or second guess myself, something in your attraction might dim. I thought steadiness was the currency of long-term connection. But I'm starting to see that steadiness without honesty is just performance. There's a tension that builds when you're loved but not fully known. You feel grateful. You feel connected. But there's a quiet voice that whispers, if they knew everything, would this feel the same? And that whisper creates distance even in closeness. I don't want that distance anymore. I don't want to be admired for the version of me that feels safest. I want to be understood in the parts that are still in progress, the parts that still carry uncertainty, the parts that don't always respond perfectly. You know what's strange? I've always believed that vulnerability is powerful. I've told others that openness deepens connection. I've encouraged honesty. But when it comes to my own unpolished edges, I hesitate. Because advice is easier than embodiment. Embodiment requires standing in front of someone and saying, this is where I'm not as strong as I look. It requires allowing your image to shift in their eyes. And that shift is what I've been trying to avoid. I've been protecting an image instead of nurturing intimacy. The image is composed, reliable, emotionally mature, and while parts of that are true, it's not the whole truth. The whole truth includes moments of fear, moments of doubt, moments where I don't know if I'm responding the right way, or loving the right way, or communicating the right way. The whole truth includes the fact that sometimes when we get closer, I feel both warmth and panic at the same time. Warmth because I want this, panic because closeness means visibility, and visibility means you can see the flaws I've been hiding. It's not that I expect you to weaponize them. It's that I've learned to preemptively protect them. I learned that protection early, that if you show too much need, people pull away. If you reveal too much confusion, they lose confidence in you. If you admit you're scared, they might see you as unstable. So I shaped myself into someone who seems certain, but certainty isn't always honest. I'm not always certain. About the future, about myself, about how to navigate every emotion perfectly. I'm still learning, still undoing old reflexes, still trying to separate past wounds from present reality. And sometimes that learning process is messy. I don't always articulate it because I'm afraid it will sound like instability. But growth is rarely linear. It's uneven. It's awkward. It includes setbacks. And I've been ashamed of the setbacks. Ashamed that I still overthink. Ashamed that I sometimes withdraw instead of immediately communicating. Ashamed that part of me still fears abandonment even when there's no evidence of it. That's the raw truth. I've been afraid that if you knew how much reassurance I sometimes need internally, you'd feel burdened. So instead of expressing it, I internalize it, I self-soothe, I distract myself, I tell myself I'm overreacting, and outwardly I remain composed. But internal composure isn't the same as internal peace. There's a cost to constantly regulating yourself alone. It creates a subtle loneliness, a feeling of standing beside someone instead of with them. And I don't want to stand beside you emotionally anymore. I want to stand with you, with all of me. There's something I haven't said directly until now. I'm scared of being fully seen because I don't know if I've fully accepted myself yet. And that's vulnerable to admit. It feels like confessing incompleteness, but we are incomplete, all of us, in different ways. I used to think I needed to resolve every insecurity before inviting someone into my life deeply, that I needed to reach some invisible benchmark of emotional mastery. But that benchmark keeps moving. And in chasing it, I keep postponing full honesty. I don't want to postpone anymore. I don't want to wait until I'm perfectly healed to be transparent. I don't want to present only the polished reflections of who I am. I want to include the drafts, the revisions, the ongoing process. Because that's real. Real connection isn't built on two finished people. It's built on two people willing to grow in front of each other, to admit when they're unsure, to say, I'm working on this, instead of pretending it's already solved. I've been working on trusting that love doesn't evaporate at the sight of imperfection. That attraction doesn't disappear when vulnerability enters the room. That closeness doesn't require control. Control has been my comfort zone. If I manage how I'm perceived, I reduce risk. If I regulate how much I reveal, I feel safer. But safety and intimacy are not the same. Intimacy asks for surrender, not reckless surrender, not blind trust, but emotional surrender. The willingness to be witnessed without rehearsing, that's what I'm learning to do. To speak before I've perfectly organized my thoughts. To admit fear before I've rationalized it away. To say, I feel insecure right now, instead of pretending I'm unbothered, because pretending has exhausted me. There's a heaviness in carrying an image, a quiet pressure to maintain consistency in how you're seen, and when that image becomes the foundation of how someone loves you, it's terrifying to disrupt it, but I don't want you to love an image. I want you to love a human being, a complex one, a sometimes confused one, a deeply feeling one. I want to believe that you can see my uncertainty and not interpret it as weakness, that you can witness my self-doubt and not question my commitment, that you can sit with my vulnerability and not feel the need to fix it. That's the kind of connection I crave. One where confession doesn't feel like a threat, where transparency isn't a gamble, where I don't have to calculate how my honesty will be received before I offer it. I know there are no guarantees. Honesty doesn't come with contracts. It doesn't promise the outcome I want. But hiding hasn't guaranteed safety either. It's only guaranteed distance. And distance, even subtle distance, erodes something over time. I don't want erosion, I want depth. Depth requires courage, not dramatic courage, quiet courage. The kind that looks like sitting across from someone and saying, I'm still learning how to trust this fully. The kind that admits, sometimes I'm scared I'll disappoint you. That's what I haven't said clearly enough. I'm scared of disappointing you. Of falling short of the version of me you believe in, of not matching the steadiness you deserve. And that fear sometimes makes me overcompensate. It makes me strive to appear stronger than I feel. But strength without honesty is hollow. Real strength, I'm realizing, is allowing yourself to be seen mid-process. Allowing someone to witness your doubts without assuming they'll run. Trusting that connection can hold complexity. I'm choosing that now, not because I've eliminated fear, but because I'm tired of letting fear dictate the depth of my relationships. I want to love without editing, to speak without rehearsing, to exist without managing perception. I don't know exactly how this changes things. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it simply softens something between us. Maybe it creates space for you to reveal parts you've been holding to. But even if nothing shifts externally, something shifts internally. When you stop hiding, there's a relief in alignment, in knowing that the version of you being loved is the real one, not the curated one. That's what I'm after. Not perfection, not invulnerability, just alignment. This is me stepping out of the room I kept locked. Not dramatically, not with spectacle, just quietly opening the door and saying, this is what's been here, my doubts, my fears, my ongoing healing, my imperfect confidence, My desire to be enough without constantly proving it. If you stay, it will mean something deeper now. If you see this and still choose connection, it won't be because of how composed I appear. It will be because you've seen the whole picture, and that's the kind of love I want, not the kind that thrives on performance. The kind that grows in honesty. I'm still learning, still becoming, still figuring out how to trust that I don't need to be flawless to be worthy. But this is me trying, not from behind walls, not from the safe front rooms, from the center, from the unpolished middle, fully here.